We are live, HCP Aftermath, and a big one it is. We're going to be talking the aftermath of Spence versus Crawford, Cali X Boxing, joined by D-Style Boxing, as always. And boy, was this a big one. Was this a big one? And what we had going into last week, and we had a feeling it was going to be this way, right? It was dubbed as two great matchups, two super fights. But instead of having great fights, what do we have? Great performances. And that happens sometimes when you have separation, when you have levels. And that was my big thing coming into last week. The main sentence, the main point I wanted to hammer home was I felt like there was separation. It was special fighter, special smaller fighter versus greater bigger fighter, great bigger fighter, special versus great. I felt that's what we had, and that's what we ended up getting. What's your overall assessment of what you saw Saturday night? Like, what are some of the key points you take home from Bud just wiping the floor with Errol Spence?
Look, the one thing that sticks out to me is this. If you notice, he never switched. He never went from orthodox to southpaw, vice versa. He never did that with his feet, right? But he still kind of switched it. He just did it in a very creative way. He morphed it in a way that was disguised. He morphed it in a way that was unique. And here's what I mean by that. If you look at some of those, and I'm not talking about the jab was on point, by the way. He landed 40% of his jabs, but changed levels with his jab. But I'm not talking necessarily about the jab, nor am I talking about the right hook, which he did land as well, right? But part of the way he finished him was with the right hook. He started looping him more. But what I'm specifically talking about is the same punch that he landed on Cal Brook, right? That was the beginning of the end for Cal Brook when he landed it, right? And then people were calling it a jab. Now people are calling what he did to Crawford a jab, to Spence a jab. You have to look at the fight very, very carefully. Crawford found a way. If you look at some of the right hands that landed, and you look at still shot photos of it, right? It's almost like he's throwing a right hand if you look at it from the waist up, even though he's in a southpaw position. And he's found a way to still use his right hand as a right hand while he's in a southpaw position. And he does it by stepping forward with it, extending the elbow out, right? And from an angle, finding range to shoot it like a right hand, right? Mm-hmm. He steps, extends, and shoots. He's found a way to do it. Now, usually you would think, well, isn't that kind of too telegraphed? Well, the problem with Spence is the high guard, right? And anyone could do this exercise right now. But if you go back to the Cal Brook fight, very relevant to this. Cal Brook, orthodox fighter, had his glove right here, right? His left hand. So he blocked his vision to be able to see, like his vision on this end, he can't see anything. So when he was fighting Cal Brook was touching his lead hand, right? And he was looking at the left of Crawford. So he could feel the right and look at the left. And he's anticipating a jab to come, right? But what he didn't know is one of those times where he didn't tap him, he extended the elbow, and as soon as Crawford timed it in such a way that when Cal Brook stepped forward to throw it straight, Crawford beat him to the punch because his lead hand is at a shorter distance, and he went ahead, and that was the beginning of the end for Cal Brook. In Spence's case, Spence is a high guard, right? Now, Spence's move his head, and he lowers the guard at times, so it's not 100%. But if you put your hands up like this, similar to a high guard, you cannot see that end, right? So Spence couldn't see or know when that right hand was being thrown. And I'm saying right hand, not hook, not jab. He couldn't see it coming. I noticed it from round 2. He couldn't see it. He couldn't anticipate it.
It goes further than that. I'm gonna let you
Sure.
hold on to your train of thought. It goes further than that. I was at a fight party in Houston. I was out of town, and just this was the first time I've ever, because we had boxing, UFC, two TVs. It's the first time I've seen UFC fans turn away from the UFC to watch the boxing. It was amazing. I've never seen that. And they noticed they were watching greatness, I think, and destruction. This was destruction. This wasn't your typical
It started
boxing
with Isaac
shenanigans.
Cruz, right?
It was right. It wasn't your typical boxing shenanigans in which the fight is on the table and the fighter goes on his bike and then we get some sort of weird decision. This was complete destruction, and they're watching greatness unfold, and they're watching somebody just utterly destroy somebody. It was beautiful to watch. But one thing that was evident to everybody in the room is, you notice, like, you ever go to school and then you if at somebody and then they go like that? That's what Errol was doing. Every single move, every twitch of Bud's body when he's doing something, Errol overreacted to. And that's where we were from like the third, fourth round on, is Bud didn't even have to use feints. As soon as Bud just moved, as soon as he threw a punch, Errol's overreacting. If Bud throws upstairs, Errol's here, and then he can land whatever he wants with the second and third punch. That's why you see what you got in CompuBox. 60% power punches land, 50% overall, over 40% jab. This dude this was target practice. This was going to the golf range and just teeing it up, boom, teeing it up, boom, teeing it up, boom. That's what this
Boom
was from like the
shakalaka.
third round on. And I'm watching this and I'm watching Errol react to every single thing. And I'm like, how hard does Bud really punch to where this dude
It's
is
not just
overreacting
that.
to the first punch, and then Bud can land whatever he wants with the second and third. We talked about coming into this fight. If you do a deep dive into the CompuBox stats, Bud throws 2 to 3 punch combinations, and he is relentless with them, and he is super accurate with them, almost 50% percentage with power punches. And that is why dudes just react to his power a different way, and Errol was no different.
The reason he overreacted is because he couldn't decipher how Bud was landing on him. Right? He think about it. If you don't know how the hell he just hits you, right? You think you have everything covered, right? And then he's hitting you with this quote unquote jab, and it feels like a right hand. And then even when you try to get that covered, then he loops it and hits you with a hook. And when you get that covered, he strains it out and he hits you with a power jab. Like, no matter what you do, Crawford, it's like Crawford, like he was playing rocks, paper, scissors with Errol, but he knew Errol's hand beforehand, right? So Errol had to do this, and Crawford was like, you know what I mean? And Errol had to do this, and Crawford was like, you know, like it's like playing rock, paper, scissors with somebody that knows what you want to put beforehand, and that's what it was like for Errol Spence. He couldn't see the right hand coming to save his life. I saw this fight with a friend. For second round, I swear to God, I said, he can't see the right hand. He can't see it coming. He can't anticipate it. Errol doesn't know he got hit with it until obviously he felt it, right? And he looked confused at first. Before he looked hurt, he looked confused, right? And then after confused, he looked, obviously he got knocked down, and that just threw off his whole game plan. Right, never been down before, right? So you don't want to experience a first time being knocked down, and then you have Crawford being the guy that knocked you down, right? Like and here's the thing, Crawford complete opposite. Now, there's one thing I said on the lead up to this fight, not to pat myself too hard in the back. I don't want to break my spine, but right, I did say for this fight, there's going to be no fooling around from Bud. He's not going to play with his food. He's going to be zoned in. He's not going to make the same quote unquote mistakes he did with lower level fighters, because he understands the significance of this fight, right? And that's what he was. He was zoned in from beginning to end. And opposite to Spence, you made a great point how Spence was overreacting to everything. Crawford Did you see how he was blocking the body shots of Spence?
Mm-hmm.
First of all, he was compact. For all the people that said Bud can deal with straight punches. Okay. So compact, ready to catch, ready to block looping shots, whatever it is, right? And the dude, Errol will go for a body shot, and it was just like this. Watch me. Like this, ladies and gentlemen. And he blocked the body shot. Are you coming this way? Blocked your body shot. Boom, what's up? Like, it was so subtle. And you could see the punches of Spence were landing on the elbow of Crawford. He was blocking those shots. If he aimed for the ribs, I gotcha. If you went lower, I gotcha. Whatever it was, no wasted movement whatsoever from Bud Crawford. And when Spence tried to mount an offense, Crawford stayed patient, shelled up. That's the best defensive work I see Crawford do in years. And then he waited for his moment, and then he went on the prowl and on the attack, right? And he did it two ways. There was times where he allowed Spence to tee off, and he blocked most of the shots, and then he would be, okay, now it's my turn, sucker, right? And then he started doing it to where he was doing it in the line of fire, Calix, right?
Mm-hmm.
While Spence is throwing, boom, I'm going to block it, boom, uppercut. The uppercuts were vicious, by the way, right? That would spell the beginning of the end. And like the Inoue fight, I think we all knew by round 3, 4, this was over. It was over. It was so over that it became uncomfortable to watch after like the 6th round. It became uncomfortable. I was thinking to myself, Derek James, what are you doing? Errol Spence, like let him fight another day, not against Crawford, but against somebody else, right? The sustained beating ain't going to do anything for Errol Spence.
We were yelling at the screen after the 7th round. Stop the fight.
Yeah.
Stop the fight. What are you doing? Stop the more on that in a minute, but I want to focus in really on stylistic matchup because I don't think people really did a good job unpacking this fight beforehand, and they're not doing a good job of unpacking it after. So I want to focus on that. But before I get to that, I talked to you last Wednesday, I think, on the phone, and I said, how nice is it? It's just nice that we have fighters of this generation doing generational stuff to where my 8-year-old son's watching a fight with me next to me. And I think he'll be able to have a memory like that we had as kids. Like you talk about it, like how we need moments in boxing and how you had moments with maybe older family members. I watched Chavez in this fight. I think my son will have that moment to where I remember being in Houston on the couch watching Bud Crawford with my dad beat up Errol Spence and how awesome it was. And this is how I got into boxing. It's nice to have things like that to where I'm at a fight party on Saturday with non-boxing people and they're asking me about Inoue on Tuesday. When you have special fighters doing special things, they're yours, right? These are our generational fighters. Previous generations, they have their guys. Now we're starting to see these guys doing special things, and we're like, man, it's so nice to have special fighters doing special things in big spots. I'm glad Bud Crawford got his moment after 5+ years. More on that later. But to have 2 special performances on the same week to where there's no bullshit attached to it, I'm sure they'll try to bring stuff in. I'm sure they're going to, give them time. They're going to bring up something with gloves, poisoning water, VADA testing. Give them time. Give them time. Don't act like they're above that. Just give them time. They're in shock right now. They're very much in shock. It's going to take some time. And then once they shake off the cobwebs, they'll be right back. But special fighters doing special things. And one of the things I wanted to break down last week on the show and why, I was definitive on this Thursday was what happens after the first punch is thrown between each fighter, because Bud, we broke down to how he's a unbelievable 2 to 3 punch combination puncher, accurate, powerful. Errol is more of a 4 to 5 punch combination guy, and he doesn't deviate from that. And his adjustment is always, when things go sideways, his adjustment is to double, triple, quadruple down on what he's already doing, because he's relied on that being overwhelming to the guys he's fought before. It wasn't going to work against Bud. He never deviated. But the thing that's special about Bud is We talked about how he could fight Errol going forward and backwards. I brought up the Gilbert Arenas interview last week about how guys who are smaller and stronger and quicker, they're a son of a bitch to deal with in any sport because they get physical with you, they get underneath you, low center of gravity. Bud was pushing Errol back whenever he wanted. He was the more physical fighter. They tried to make it seem like Errol was going to be the more physical fighter. Bud was the more physical fighter. When he wanted to go forward, he can go forward. And whenever he wants to trap Errol into coming forward, he just takes a half step back. And the first knockdown was him off the ropes on his back foot. The second knockdown was him on the ropes off his back foot. 2 different punches. And we brought up how he can switch hit. Why is that important? Because he can catch different angles. That's what he's doing. He's standing in front of Spence in the southpaw position. Whenever Spence throws that second punch, which is generally a sweeping hook, he's going to land the right hand right on top of it, or he's going to land it before he even throws it. He's waiting for him to throw the jab. He's going to do that. Spence throws the 4 to 5 punch combination, jab first, jab on the way out, or hold. And he picked up those patterns early. He picked them up early. It's why the first round was slow. He's just waiting. He's just waiting for him. And then, I don't know if you noticed this, the first knockdown was beautiful because Errol throws the jab. No, Errol throws the left hand, and Buzz is waiting for him, right? And he actually lands, they caught the second punch. He lands the straight left. And this is offhand, D-Styles. It's offhand on the back of his stance. He lands the straight left behind Spence's ear, wobbles him. Spence leans to the right. That's when he catches him with the right hand and puts him down. It's just all of these things. He was just a much more complete and special fighter. It ended up being levels, as we said. That's why people were calling me negative for this multiple times, but I never viewed these guys as true 50-50 peers. I've always felt like Bud was a level above Errol. And now after watching this fight, he may be 2 levels above Errol looking at it.
Look, this is going to sound scary, bro, but we've never seen the best.
I already know what you're going to say without saying it. It is scary.
We've never seen the best of Terence Crawford. Crawford said in an interview, in the first round, I said to myself, that's it? So in other words, whatever gear he was on, there's more gears, right? There's more to it. And all those other, I just don't think he took, like, he knew it was a foregone conclusion with those other guys he fought. And that's, he willingly traded with some of them because he knew he was going to get the best of the exchanges. That was something he wanted to do. I know that sounds crazy, but I want to mention something, Calix. First of all, and I stand by that. I don't think we've seen the best of Crawford. I don't. He's even better than this. And I'm hoping he may have to move up to 154, maybe 160, maybe Canelo. What? But not right now. I don't want to do the whole like they're doing anyway, but one step at a time. But I'm just saying that's how good he is, right? But he told your man, like, he knocked down Spence. Bro, let me tell you something. You know that old saying, this world's a playground to me? That ring's a playground. That's his playground, bro. That's all it is. To Crawford, like, fighting a dude like Spence in the ring, it's like a kid riding a bike, bro. That's what it is. Is there a way? Oh, he might fall off the bike. Okay, he might get punched. That's what it is, bro. He knocked down Spence, and he knew he didn't have to look for him. He knew what your mouth was, right? He said, "Here are my fucking balls. You're next," right? Talking shit while Spence is trying to get up and he's staggering and like usually fighters are taught to go to your corner, keep an eye on your opponent, and the moment the ref says box, go at him. Crawford was like, this shit's over. Let me talk shit to you, pal. Remember I said you were talking? You're next. All right? Now, I don't know he'll be next. I think Canelo's going to pack his shit for good, but it is what it is. But that's how much he dominated this dude. This was like Gotti-Mayweather, bro.
Yep.
When somebody tweeted me that, I didn't even have a second of that. I was like, yeah, it is. It is. And the reason that analogy works is everyone knew that Gotti stood no shot against Mayweather. Like, everybody knew this. You know what I mean? Um, I'm sure there was a lot of Gotti fans that bet with their heart and believed, but I don't know. I don't think they really believed. I think they were
Right.
hoping, right? Maybe they were hoping Gotti put up a good fight and that would have been a win, right?
Right.
But like, this was supposed to be a 50-50 fight. He made him look like Gotti. You know what I mean? That's how he made him look, bro. That's
This
hard.
is
That's crazy.
we need to highlight this because it's the third knockdown is when it happened. And the second knockdown, like you said, he already knows where Mel is. But the third knockdown, imagine this. This is what he's doing. He is toying with, taunting a top, according to a lot of people, a top 5 pound for pound guy in the ring. That's what he's doing. He just knocked him down again. That guy's in the neutral corner getting counted. He grabs his balls, looks directly at Mel. So he's beating up a pound for pound guy. And while he's beating up a pound for pound guy, he's taunting another pound for pound guy in the first row, grabbing his balls and saying, "You're next. You're next. Oh, by the way, they just finished counting. I'm going to go beat up your best friend some more. I'm going to go beat him up a little more. Is that okay with you?" That's what he's doing.
By the way, Calex, the sparring partner that many say gets the best of Jermell.
I'm witnessing this with my very own eyes. And I'm thinking to myself, how miserable are people? I said the same thing about Inoue. How miserable are people that they have greatness right in front of them for years, and they're so busy with their narratives, the narrative building, that they're missing it. It's right in front of you, dude. You have greatness right in front of you, and it's so evident, but you're so busy with your narrative building that you can't just enjoy it. Enjoy it. It's right in front of you. What is not enjoyable about a dude beating down a pound for pound guy and then looking at another pound for pound guy in the first row, grabbing his balls and saying, "You're next. You're next. All right, I'm going to go beat up your buddy a little more, but you're next." It's amazing. So what I say with Bud is, Bud in particular, because Donaire had his moments in a way in the first fight, but Bud in particular has no peers. That's what they say about Michael Jordan, right? Remember Michael Jordan in the 80s and 90s? He had to go through the 86 Celtics, 87 Lakers, 89, 90 Bad Boys, 91 Barclays, the Ewings. He had to go through all these guys, but all those guys said we weren't his peers. He had no peers. He was a level above all of us. You know, he didn't really.
How many of those guys would have been champions if Jordan wasn't around? I mean,
right. And but he's doing this, and they're saying he doesn't even turn it into fifth gear unless he has to. He always has another gear he can turn it into, and that's Bud right now. Bud he never had any peers at 135, 140. And despite the propaganda they've been trying to brainwash you with for a half a decade now, he never had peers at 147. When his name was brought up, and that's why context is key. Put things in the proper perspective. There's a reason he didn't get the fights for years. There's a reason when his name is brought up, Keith Thurman, I don't know. You know, we got to talk to Al Heyman. Danny Garcia, Angel Garcia. Oh, there's not enough money in that. We got to talk to Al Heyman. And then Errol for 5 years says, you got your side of the street. I got my side of the street. Let's clean it up. There's a reason. The graphics are out there. There's a reason that when Showtime showed their welterweight champions, guess who was missing? Bud Crawford. He wasn't on the graphic. They acted like this dude didn't exist, and we're not. We are not. One thing we are not going to do here is act like none of that stuff happened, like it's all washed away, that, oh, they put on this great event Saturday night, so all is forgiven. No, fuck that. No.
I'll tell you what, Alex.
You propagandized people. For 5 years, you held another big super welterweight fight from us for 5+ years, much like you did Mayweather Pacquiao. So no, fuck that. We're not forgetting. We're not forgiving. It's not going to happen.
Crawford tried to do what Inoue did.
And you're going to have they're going to have to eat their crow, but they're going to have to do it with interest, because you held it back from us for so long.
Here's the thing, Crawford tried to do what Inoue just did. He wanted to go at the main dude. He was like, yo, I want to fight you, Spence. I'm moving up to welterweight. I want you to be my maiden voyage at welterweight, right? Nah, well, you don't even got a belt. At the time, Calix, two-time lineal champion in 2 different weight classes, undisputed at 140 pounds. And you're telling this dude he's got to go get a belt. You didn't tell Mikey Garcia to go get a belt. Oh, Mikey Garcia, you welcomed him with open arms. You said, "Oh, my brother, let's break bread together, my Mexican brother, Mikey Garcia. Let's do it in Dallas Stadium." You know what I mean? And you give him a big hug and you thank him for the opportunity because he was a pound for pound fighter. But you don't want to give Crawford. Crawford had to go get a belt. Crawford had to become your man. I heard Spence fans, well, why if Crawford really wanted to fight, why did he become the mandatory in the IBF? He was the undisputed champion, 140 pounds, number 1 pound for pound or number 2 pound for pound, depending on who you had, Canelo or him. He was right up there. And you're telling this dude you have to wait? Are you out of your mind? And then he does it anyways. Okay, fine, I'll get a belt. Beats up Jeff Horn, right? Underrated win, by the way. I still stand by that. And I want one of you Spence fans, come tell me now, that's Horn. You know how many rounds Horn lasted? The same as fucking Spence. Okay?
Guess what? Now it don't matter. Don't matter now.
It don't matter no more, but here's the thing. You're right, Calix. And what they did, there's actually something vile and sinister about what they attempted to do. And just because you weren't successful doesn't mean you're not guilty of it, right? And it goes with content creators, okay? And I know a lot of dudes have been here for a long time. I see Apple tap in the chat. He's been here for a long time. A lot of you have been seeing this shit. You remember when they wanted, all of a sudden, PBC wanted to pretend like the WBO belt wasn't a thing anymore. There was no more 4-belt era, ladies and gentlemen. They try to rewrite history and act like the 4-belt era was not a thing. Nobody remember Crawford was the first 4-belt era champion since Jermaine Taylor. Shortly after he did that, all of a sudden they're not counting the WBO. What type of horse shit is that? And it's sinister about it. They try to pretend he didn't exist. They try to freeze him out. Now they couldn't ignore him forever. And eventually it turned back on that because when Jermell became undisputed, it was starting to look ridiculous that they weren't counting the WBO belt, right? Some of their own fighters were fighting for WBO belt, so all of a sudden they went back on it. But the attempt, Calix, and you know what's worse? We had content creators on here like, yeah, what's a WBO belt anyway? The WBO belt? Come on, Crawford wanted the WBO don't count. Like they were talking like it was 1999 or some shit. This was 2018, bro. 2019, they were talking about WBO belt like it wasn't a recognized belt anymore. This shit's insane.
Here's what they need to know is it never ends. It doesn't end. If you think that you can go on Twitter and make fun of these guys yesterday at YouTube and that they're just gonna crawl, no, they're going to get some other poor fighter out there, get them on their side. And they're going to run. They're already busy doing something else. Don't doubt me on that.
But you know what's happening, Calix? You see, what happened, the Inoue thing last Tuesday, that was what we call a reckoning. Okay? It was a reckoning for a lot of dudes that thought it was a hype job, and then he beat the shit out of Fulton, right? Oops. Right? Last Saturday was a reckoning as well. And we all kind of knew it. You know, like when you kind of know what's going to happen, and you don't know because anything could happen in boxing, blah, blah, blah. But we knew at the same time. And it was like, it's a reckoning. Like a reckoning that's what it was, bro. And you have dudes out here, and I get it. And I could appreciate it to a certain degree, but they're like, man, whoo, what a great fight, huh? Yeah, Spence is a warrior, yeah, and he is, you know, but that's not how you guys were talking.
No.
And something similar happened about it anyway. People were questioning these guys' resume, legacy, everything they stand for, their greatness as fighters. All that, they put all that on the line on them. And you know what? Like both of them are like stone cold assassins, and we're like, you can't ice me. You can't make the moment too big for me. Like, I'm good. Like, I'm going to fuck this dude up. And that's what they did. And in Crawford's case, right, they made him wait 5 years. 5. He had to wait 5 years on Spence's schedule. Canelo became undisputed in under a year. All right? Bud could have done it just as fast, but he couldn't. You know why? Because Errol Spence wanted to fight every 16 months. But we have to always hear, oh, Canelo's holding up the division. Canelo! Why is he fighting Yildirim? Right? You fought like 5 times, like 4 times that year. You're complaining about one of the fights. EJ was fighting every 16 months. That's not an exaggeration, bro.
No, it wasn't. Let me get to these super chats real quick. Shout out my guy Nando, as always. Always appreciate the support, Nando. This was PBC's karma for what they did to Manny. And PBC's eating a lot of crow right now. My guy Haplo, F Spence, and Frotch, but mainly Spence. This dude's always got to take shots at Frotch. And look,
nobody ever did Frotch like that. I'll tell you that right now.
But this is the difference between fan bases, right? Is we're learning, and we've learned over the years that I like a lot of the PBC fighters. I don't like how they manage them, but a guy like Spence, I respect the hell out of him because he never gave up. He was trying, man. He has a lot of heart, and he showed that he has a chin, right? Because he still got stopped on his feet. We're going to question his punch resistance for sure, in his lifestyle, all that stuff. More on that later. But what I know is a lot of their fan bases have glass chins, and it's showing. When Canelo loses to Bivol, it's like, oh, he lost. I think he loses to Bivol if he fights him 10 times. Frotch, he lost to Andre Ward. I think he loses on 10. You see how easy that is, though? I'm glad Cotto's my guy. I'm glad he lost to Canelo because Canelo becomes lineal and ends up fighting Golovkin, something Cotto wouldn't have done. But you see how easy that is to, like, pick your favorite fighter and just say something negative about him? It's easy. It's easy. Why do you have so much invested in fighters to where you have to go to these places where they're going? They have glass chins. These dudes have glass chins, and we're going to make fun of them for it. But I want to highlight this because marination. And I brought this up at the beginning of the show on Thursday, and people like, Calix, stop being negative. It's a big fight, but we needed to highlight it. Why? Because when you marinate a big fight for 5 years, especially when the house fighter doesn't have a strong resume ahead of it, you put so much on this one fight. And it was evident going in that the aging out process of Bud Crawford backfired. It completely backfired because they ended up aging Spence out for his big fight. And on top of that, they keep sending their top fighters, Stephen Fulton Jr., 14 months, Errol Spence, 15 months, Mel Charlo, 17 months. Stop sending your fighters in there on long layoffs. What are you doing? What are y'all doing out here? But they're putting so much on singular fights. We're consistent here. We say we don't throw fighters away after one loss, but here's the problem with this one is they invested so much in this single fight. They're like, yeah, you'll get it eventually. And at the same time, they're overvaluing wins. The PBC is great at this. They're great at getting their fighters, I believe, ranked higher than they belong. And in doing so, they do this beautifully with Tank, by the way. It's part of the Tank Davis theorem. They overvalue and overbuild Tank's wins. And then you watch these guys fight. I'm watching Isak Cruz fight Saturday night. I was like, what the hell is this? This is a complete hype job. This guy's walking around like a real life. He's swinging at the air. Come on. They overvalue their wins. They overvalue these guys. I'm looking at guys on their resume.
It's a pit bull, bro.
Danny Garcia. They're overvaluing wins like Danny Garcia at welterweight, Mikey Garcia at welterweight. And I still see, look, and some of these guys are friendly. Some of these guys on the podcast I'm watching yesterday are good dudes. And for the most part, good content. But I'm watching them open up shows and saying Bud has a weak resume and Errol never ducked anybody, and Errol has a strong resume. I'm looking at Errol's resume, and I'm like, it took him 5 years. He's a one-division fighter. It took him a half a decade to consolidate 3 belts when he had every fight on the board, and they refused to give us the biggest fight. And they want to revise history and act like none of this shit happened. No, it happened, and now you're going to have to eat your crow with interest. This is the problem with marinating fights. Now we have to look at Errol's career in totality and say, I think that run at welterweight's kind of overrated. And at the top of that, his one big fight, since they did it at the wrong time, he lost. And he lost severely. And on top of that, Stephen Fulton Jr. is 28 years old. He has time to right the ship. This dude's 33 and he's out there looking like he's 43. And now he's got to right the ship, try to figure out how to right the ship at an advanced age. And this is the problem with marinating fights. And if they're going to do it, they're going to do it. They got to take the good and bad that comes along with it. And if they want to say stuff like, we gave you a super fight. Yeah, you waited 5 years. So now your house fighter lost. And now if you want to sit back and revise history more, no, you're not going to do it. You're not going to do it. Now you have to eat your crow with interest, since you waited so long. But when I look at
crow with like, and water it down, wash it down with fucking with a glass of piss. Okay.
Never forget the propaganda that they pushed the past 5 years, and they rolled good people over the bus. Good people were underneath that bus. They're just rolling over them so they can push this propaganda. I watched these dudes call Bud Crawford top-ranked Toby and all kind of stuff just because he was on the other side of the street. And they want you to just forget that happened. They want you to forget that you turned on Showtime and they acted like Bud Crawford, who many of us felt was the best welterweight in the world, didn't even exist at welterweight. And now they want you to forget that all of it happened. No, we gave you the super fight and 2 warriors went to battle. No, fuck that. That's no. You lost. Your house fighter lost. He lost badly. And that's your fault. And now you got to eat the crow with interest. This is the problem with marinating fights. This time it didn't go well for him. This time it didn't go. The other welterweight super fight that they waited 5-6 years, that went well for them. This one did not. So now you got to take what you get and you got to deal with it. And that's what we're dealing with.
So what it's saying is when PBC sends their fighters, they don't send their best. They're inactive. They're not sharp. They're getting destroyed. Like, it is what it is, but it was not a good week for PBC, at least PBC fanboys, I should say, right? It just wasn't a good week for them. This was not what they expected. All right. Like, it is what it is. And look, this is not a shot at genuine Spence fans that are just fans of Spence, by the way.
They know who he's talking to.
But you know exactly what we're talking about. Look, like, what they tried to do to Crawford was some sinister shit. Right. And it didn't stop there, Kelly. I saw discussing posts where they're talking crazy about his wife and why is he with her, and like just things that you as an individual, it's none of your business. Why the fuck are you even talking about that? What the fuck's the matter with you? Right? And they were bringing that shit up. So like I saw people talking shit to his sister on Twitter. I saw people talk all types of greasy ass shit about his people and his team and his staff. This was personal. Like, a lot of fans made a boxing fight. We just wanted to see the fight. So we wanted to do. They made
escapism. It's escapism for us, and they're bringing other shit into it. And we're not going to forget about it. We're not. You're going to have to deal with this for a long time. We're going to be talking about this for a long time. Believe me on that. We ain't letting it go.
And you know what the trick is? And I want everybody to be well aware of the trick. The trick that's done is, why are you talking bad about Fulton? Fulton went to Japan, and like we did not talk bad about Fulton. We're talking shit about you motherfuckers that are trying to bury Inoue's name in the mud. That's what we're talking about. That's not Fulton. We're not talking shit about EJ.
Another thing that do D-style is they say, oh, that's just a fringe base. No, dude, these are places where Steven Espinosa's go to, where journalists are co-hosting shows with these guys. This is a big part of the base, and they feed off of, and they're emboldened by nobody checking them, because oh, I'm just going to act neutral on this. It's both sides. No, you missed the first 27,000 punches that were landing when everybody was like, oh, just leave them alone. Let them do what they do over there. They'll eventually tire out. No. And now you're going to say stuff like it's both sides. It's not both sides. Finally, people are pushing back on it, and we're learning that these dudes have glass chins. They cannot deal with it. They don't know how to react. They start spazzing out.
And I know why, Calix.
Lose fights.
I could break it down for you. Get to the super chat for. I'm going to break down why they're acting the way they're acting. By the way, well, why we're seeing a lot of weird behavior. But go ahead and get the super chat real quick. So
I am Dwayne this time. Appreciate you for always supporting. Marinating translates from Al Heyman to freezing or aging a fighter out. It's a tactic, not a promotional tool. And we've talked about this deep down. This is where a lot of the hatred comes from when they push back on us. I talked about it. A lot of good people have been rolled over. And the sad part about it is these dudes who act neutral just stand on the side. They just watch it. They just watch people that they know are good people just get rolled over because they're afraid to address this stuff. They're afraid to address the elephant in the room. And when it comes to the PBC, Al Heyman, they have a very flawed model of keeping things in-house. They keep their fighters insulated. And what we're finding out is there's an artificial environment in there. And guys are looking better than they really are in there. And then when they step out of this bubble and get in real fights, we start to find out that these dudes aren't what they were built up to be. And I had these dudes last year telling me that welterweight's the best division in boxing because they got 7 undefeated fighters. Look at the talent from the bottom to the top. And I know why they're saying this because it's full of PBC fighters, but I'm asking them, how is Avanesian a Euro bum when he's number 8 in the best division in boxing? You said it's the best division. He's number 8 no matter where you look. And they push these narratives that Avanesian's not that good. You talked about it. Jeff Horn's not that good. And what do we have now, D-Style?
You don't beat Pacquiao if you're not good, bro.
But D-Style, what do we have now? And this was the flawed narrative going forward, that one guy has this great resume, one guy does not. Is they're not putting in proper context why Bud can't get fights like Danny Garcia, Mikey Garcia, which would have been easy fights for him. Keith Thurman would have been such an easy fight for him. But this dude is now, this is what we have, D-Style. This is what we have now, concrete. This dude is a 3-division lineal champion, 3-division unified champion, 2-division undisputed champion, okay? And now he's got 18-0 in title fights, with many of them being knockouts. And he's undefeated with an 100% KO percentage at welterweight. This is what we have as far as a resume and achievements now. They can no longer, and I could take it further than that. Who beats him between 147 and 160? I mean, you could throw out wild cards. You can throw out maybe Tim Tszyu at 154, maybe Boots Ennis at 1, but those are huge maybes. This is what we're looking at now. And it shows you how flawed everything was when it came to Bud coming into this fight.
You look, the funny part is that the Spence fans were saying that Bud Crawford was the product of matchmaking, and Crawford was the one that was all smoke and mirrors, and Crawford is the one that was being protected. And no, Crawford was not the one being protected. They were trying to get Crawford in the ring with anyone that would be willing to get in the ring with him. That's the best they could fucking find. That's to drag Porter out of PBC to finally get that dude in the ring. And when he was about to beat Porter's ass, when he was about to do some damage to him, his dad made himself the bad guy to protect his son and made himself the target. That's what he did. Your son was about to get fucked up. I saw footage of your son training. Don't give me that shit that he didn't train right, and that's why I pulled him out, because I knew he hadn't trained hard enough. So I waited till late in the fight to pull him out. I don't buy it. I think you protected your son from a beatdown, and you'll rather people talk about how you are a horrible person for saying that about your son and all that. But at the same time, it cushions the loss of your son. Nah, Crawford was about to beat the shit out of your son. Right? That's just the way it is. Right? But look, let me tell you why a lot of this is happening. All right? A lot of these dudes did not start watching boxing to around a time that either right before or right after Mayweather fought Pacquiao. Right? Mayweather was an undefeated fighter. Mayweather made having your old popular, being undefeated popular. Oh, I'm the best ever because I never lost. There's no blueprint to beat me. He made that a staple.
Yep.
That's what he did. And by doing so, even after he retired, Calix, a lot of them adopted Andre Ward, another good fighter. Andre Ward ended his career undefeated.
Mm-hmm.
So a lot of these dudes, if you ever hear them talk, even before guys prove anything, like Boots or anybody, like they'll talk about these guys like they're unbeatable, like they're already anointed, right?
Yep.
And anointment syndrome. You know what I mean? And here's the thing. I think a lot of them, like the reason they acted so weird, and shout out to Blood Boxing, because he's the one that pointed this out originally. The reason they acted so weird, like in a way we've never seen, when Wilder lost, because they thought like the same thing was going to happen. Like, well, Floyd went undefeated, Ward went undefeated. Yeah, like they were saying things like it's impossible to beat Wilder, he can't lose, and so what happened when he lost? They were in genuine shock. It couldn't be true. And he was drugged. Breland drugged him because he's jealous of him. Like, what? Oh, he had egg weights in the glove. Oh, no, it wasn't egg weights. He took off the horsehair. Oh, no, it was bare knuckles. Oh, no, it was. They came up with every excuse in the book. And a lot of those same fans, to this day, talk like he's undefeated, and even he never legitimately beat him because he's a gypsy and he's a cheater. We know how gypsies are, right? It's just some racist ass shit, bro. Crazy, bigoted for sure, right? But here's the thing. I think they genuinely felt like, well, Spence is the anointed one. Spence is the one that Floyd said is the future. He's the one that was sparring Floyd and all that. Like when Thurman wanted to fight Floyd was like, well, fight Spence. So he was the guy that he gave the rub to at welterweight. And they genuinely believe that yeah, he's going to go undefeated, right? I mean, it's Errol Spence. It's just like my boy Floyd, just like Ward and everybody, right? Like, and it just didn't happen. A lot of these guys, Kellex, they're in genuine shock when these guys lose.
It's a loss, bro.
They can't believe it. By the way, get us to 100 likes. Get us to 100 likes.
They didn't have to build this fight up the way they did. That's the tightrope you walk when you do this, is you're waiting so long to give it to us. And now, especially when fighters are so inactive, we're going to be relying heavily on one fight. And we're going to be relying heavily even more when it's a super fight on dictating what we think of that fighter as far as legacy. And you try to warn them. Now, you try to warn them that, number one, and I tweeted this out like the third round, you're finding out now why Al Heyman kept Bud away from Al Heyman's fighters for a half a decade. You're finding it out right now. And that was just the beginning. I didn't think it was going to get that vicious. And you try to spell it out. And then you try to spell out that if you just make the fights, then Stephen Fulton Jr. is going to be fine. That dude can bounce back. He doesn't have the mileage. He's going to bounce back from that loss. Now, dudes take those losses worse when they're in their 30s than when they're in their 20s. Errol just looked aged in there as the fight went on because he's just taken a beating at 33 years old after what he's been through the past couple of years, and now he's got wear and tear. But I also want to highlight this, because people act like it doesn't matter. And I think this is why you get a lot of the narratives you get when it comes to American fighters, American boxing journalists, PBC fans in particular, because what do their fighters not have a lot of? It's title fights. And I think that's why they're pushing this narrative now that the belts don't really matter. They don't matter. You gotta get championships, right? Bud Crawford, if we're not counting Nonito Donaire, because I think he's counted as a Filipino fighter, he's the only American fighter today, modern American fighter, with more than double-digit title victories. None. Like, he's lapped the field. Fulton had 3. Spence had 7. And people didn't highlight enough that gap in that title fights are title fights. None of them are like easy, right? These are title fights. People are coming for your titles. This dude now has 18. Anybody else there up there are foreign fighters. Bud's the only American fighter going for belts on a consistent basis. I'm convinced at this point, Twitter would have been around in the 90s, early 2000s. They would have been shitting on Bernard Hopkins and, oh, those 20 title victories, they're not that good because, look at the victories Tito had as opposed to B-Hop. Now they act like, oh, look at all the title victories. Look at all the title victories that B-Hop had. 17, now 18 title victories on top of doing it in 3 different weight classes, on top of not only winning, but showing out in your biggest fight. There's no denying it now. There's no denying it. I also want to highlight this. We don't throw fighters away after a loss, so we'll be looking for Spence going forward. I think a lot of people are going to throw him under the bus. There's a certain level of empathy, even though they held this from us. Errol seems like a good dude to me, and I'm watching him get beat down, and I'm empathetic because you can just tell nothing's going right for him, and there's nothing he can do. There's nothing he knows how to do in order to change that tide, right? In order to push back on it. And I'm watching him get beat down, and I'm like, Derek James needs to step in. He refuses to step in. Thankfully, Doc steps in and stops the fight. But I hope, I pray he's got some people around him, at least one person that'll sit him down in his ranch in Dallas and say, this isn't the one, dude. Like this guy right here, it's hard enough going into the ring with him once. He's a malicious fighter. That, if you go back and look at the last exchange, D-Style, the 9th round exchange, the punches, if you watch them for ringside, Showtime, I couldn't believe they even showed this on Showtime on Twitter, at last minute. Those punches he's catching were just malicious, career-ending punches he's catching. And I cannot believe Derek James sent them back out. Therefore, I don't think Derek James is getting enough criticism for that. I hope he'll have somebody now that will sit him down on his ranch and say, we can't do it. You can't fight this guy again. You can't beat him. You can fight this guy whatever weight you want to fight him at, whatever gloves, whatever ring size, whatever you want. You can have everything. You can have the air conditioned, perfect temperature for you, anything. You're not beating this guy. You can put 8-ounce gloves on and put 12 on him. You're not going to beat this guy, and it's only going to get worse. We need to step away. We need to put the shovel down. We need to say, look, this dude can fight Keith Thurman at 154 next year. He can go up to a catch weight of 155 and fight the Danny Garcia, Arislandi Lara winner if they do something like that. They can get creative with them in easier PBC fights, right? The ones that he's used to. You do not fight Bud Crawford again. You do not do it. And by the way, appreciate that super chat, Nando. But you don't. Sneakily, as David Benavidez a big winner this past Saturday, and does David Morrell go along with it? We talked about how they do things over there, D-Style, and trust the track record. There's a reason that they were keeping Errol away from Bud. There was a reason they were keeping Danny away from him, Mikey away from him, Keith away from him. They were not going to let this dude run through that roster, and there's a reason that they're keeping David Benavidez safe as well, in my opinion. And trust the track record over there. Just trust it. That's how they operate. But I hope, and I don't know how you feel about this. We haven't talked about it, but as far as the rematch, if they exercise this rematch clause and fight him in December, which Errol wants to do, I mean, I have to assume at that point that nobody cares about the dude. That's what I have to assume. They got to be sitting him down and say, look at your kids running around right there. Look at your, beautiful wife. You got a beautiful family. Look at what you did, dude. You made generational money on Saturday night. Your kids will be able to benefit from that money if you do it smart. Why go in the ring with that guy again? Why? They have to be telling him that. I have to assume if this Bud Crawford rematch, if this happens, nobody cares about him in his team. Am I wrong?
No.
Wait, let me get to this super chat real quick. HLD, $20 super chat. Appreciate you, HLD. Love to watch and hear the hardcore pro Bud fans act just like the hardcore TO fans, demanding respect, apologies, retribution with interest from their fighter for all detractors, haters, and false narratives. Yes. Yeah. Am I supposed to push back on that? Yeah. Yeah.
Shout out to HLD, by the way. We appreciate your support, brother. Look, man. First of all, as a fight fan, I don't need to see a rematch. Like, it's a waste of time. We could do some other fights. You get what I mean? Like, maybe Spence could move up and challenge Tim Tszyu or something, or maybe do something else. Like, you know what I mean? Fight somebody else.
I'd rather
I'm just
see
saying.
Bud do that, by the way. I love that fight.
What's that?
I'd rather see Bud versus Tim Tszyu at one.
No, I know, but what I'm saying is I don't know what Bud's going to go that direction or not. I don't know what Bud's going to do, right? Not like the dude's hating on anyway. I'm not over here saying, "Oh, Bud, he should move up now." Like, Bud's gonna do what he wants to do. But here's the thing: I don't understand for the life of me why anyone would be for a rematch. Aside from what I just said, but most importantly, he could really damage Errol Spence if he hasn't already.
Mm-hmm.
We don't know he took a beating, bro. Like, some of those still shots are horrifying to watch, bro. Like, I know people are trolling like hell right now, and they're using them. I see them everywhere. These here to our side right here are nothing compared to some of the screenshots that are out there, bro. All right. There's one of them, and I'm not trying to be disrespectful or nothing, but there's one shot in particular, and I think everyone's going to know which one I'm talking about, where he lands a big shot. I believe it's a right hand on Errol Spence. And Errol Spence looks like an old grandma, bro. Like he aged him like 80 years with that one punch, right? You could actively see his soul leave his body at times when he was getting punched, bro. And Crawford did an all around. I wish they had like the old HBO where they would show like the torso, like the little graphic design and where all the punches are landing. Crawford was landing everywhere, bro. Torso, he was landing in the solar plex, in the chin, okay, upside the head, forehead. He was landing in the nose, everywhere, under the eyes. Crawford was landing everywhere, body and head, with both hands, relentlessly. And we saw Errol Spence in front of our eyes fall apart. Will he ever be the same? I don't know. But you put him in the ring again, he might be done after that.
That was a career-altering loss. I mean, those are those losses. Like, you talk about it, right? We disagree on what happened last few seconds of Chavez Meldrick Taylor, but what we agree on is the beating that he took against Chavez that night. Those big punches he was taking completely altered what happened going forward for Meldrick Taylor, right? And I worry for Spence here. It's the empathy that comes in, because we can compartmentalize here. We can say, yes, Spence's super fan base, you know, they're crazy and we'll troll them, right? But we put that over here, and then we just look at Spence. We put the marination part aside. We just look at Spence, right? And we say, I hope he doesn't just have yes men around him. I hope he doesn't have people around him just looking for dollar signs and saying, look, that was a bad beating he took on Saturday night, right? And it's going to age him 10 years. Bud just, what he does to fighters, they're not the same, particularly this beating on Saturday night where Bud was in his zone, right? Special fighters do that, right? You see him against some other fighters and like, yeah, he looks great, but, you know, I don't know. And then they show up for the super fight and they got different gears, 5th, 6th, 7th gears, right? We said that about Bivol against Canelo, right? It's like, I never saw that version of Bivol before, but he shows up in his biggest fight. Teofimo does it. Teofimo does it all the time. He just looks like a different dude against Lomachenko and Josh Taylor. Certain guys just show up bigger when the lights are bigger, and Bud's cut from that cloth. But Bud, the conversations are different with Bud, right? It's Mayweather was there, Pacquiao was there. So we're watching the fight, and as we're watching the fight, we're having these conversations as what would happen between Bud versus Mayweather? What would happen between Bud versus Pacquiao? What would happen between Bud versus Ray Leonard, Tommy Hearns? Those were never the conversations with Errol Spence going in. I tried to explain that. The more conversations I had in my head was what would happen between Errol Spence, Miguel Cotto, Errol Spence, Paul Williams, Errol Spence, Margarito. That's more of the level for him. But Bud, after that fight, he's now in that conversation to where dudes are looking generational stuff and they're asking generational questions when it comes to Bud now.
Oh yeah.
So I mean, that's what it is with Bud. That's what he proved on Saturday night, and it was just one of those performances. And it's nice to have those performances. I know people didn't get the great fights that they wanted, but they got great performances. And special performances from special fighters is important, and that's why it's important also to highlight the title fights. Is Oscar De La Hoya had 5 title fights in 1 year, 1 calendar year, 5 in 1 year. Errol had 7 his whole career. There's just differences between today's fighters and fighters before.
And here's the thing, Alex.
You don't have too many fighters today who can be in those conversations.
One of them was Ocampo, one of them was Mikey Garcia, another one was Danny Garcia.
Yeah.
I'm just saying. But Crawford was a protected one. Right? I mean, and I don't want to go there, but they're the ones that went there. So here we are, right?
And that's the kind of tightrope we have to walk, right? Is we don't throw fighters away. We very much want to see what's going to happen with Spence going forward. I very much still believe Spence is a great fighter, as well as Stephen Fulton Jr. I've highlighted that. Nothing has changed. I think they just ran into special fighters and looked average. Great fighters look average against special fighters. That's what happened. But I think the conversation needs to happen amongst Spence's team, and I think even retirement needs to be on the table. And that might sound crazy to some people, but Bud put years on his career, man, and you got to be careful going forward. Am I wrong with that? Like, am I reading too much into that? Like, the rematch cannot happen, right? It can't happen.
I mean, we might get it. We didn't want to see the third Wilder Fury fight, and we got it. So I'm not going to rule it out. I'm not going to it is what it is. If it happens, it happens. But there's no doubt in my mind that Spence wants it, right? At least at the moment, but somebody might talk him out of it, or he might just accept I ain't gonna beat that dude. Let me move on, right? But
a lot of people want things that are.
I think I'm gonna take it a step further, Calix. I think he should probably consider retirement. And I'll tell you why. I don't. I think there's something with that left eye. He was pulled out of the Pacquiao fight because of it. Ugas couldn't capitalize from that angle because he's an orthodox fighter, and Spence was able to see the right hand coming better, right? Mm-hmm. In this fight, he couldn't see the right hand coming to save his life. Any aura he had prior to this fight, Crawford literally just took it. He destroyed that aura, right? Have you seen the movie Thor, when Thor throws the hammer at his sister?
I've never seen it.
Just catches and destroys the unbreakable hammer. That's what happened. He just destroyed it. He destroyed the aura of Spence, and now guys they're gonna go for the proud. They're going for it's gonna be a different career path for him. But it's not just that, Calix. He just wasn't reacting well to those punches. He just wasn't. And I get that Crawford is Crawford. I get that Crawford is special, and he is. But Spence, it just, even after the fight, bro, he looked something looked off. It just did. His eyes looked gazy. He just didn't look right. And I get an ass whooping could do that maybe, but I'm just saying there was something more than just he took a beating. Like there was just something more going on, and I'll say that one more thing. I see people, they keep talking about the car crash. Oh, the car crash this, the car crash that. A fighter is everything. How he fights in the ring and what he does outside of the ring, how he carries himself outside of the ring, how he prepares and stays. A warrior stays a warrior. Look at Canelo. Tens of millions of dollars in the bank, right? Still trains like a workhorse, right? You always see him posting. He doesn't post his cars, and he posts him training. Crawford, what do you see? You see him training. He's sparring this dude, that dude. We talked to one of his sparring partners, right? And he said, yeah, like after the fight, he was giving me pointers. Like he's still like giving pointers to guys. He's still helping Shakur. He's still doing his thing, right? But here's what people haven't talked about. 15 years ago, Terence Crawford was shot in the head. Got himself to a hospital. He survived that, right? So all this, like, well, look at what Spence had to go through. Look what this dude went through. Got shot in the head. And now I don't want to be too spiritual or nothing, but I believe things happen for a reason. Crawford survived a shot in the head for a reason, right? And I do believe that Crawford was put on this earth. When God made Crawford, he said, you're going to be a fighter. That's what it was. He was born a fighter. That's what he is. Got shot in the head, he fought through that, right? He willed himself through that. And any man who can survive that, believe me, he believes that destiny's on his side. And that's a dangerous dude to beat. That's a dangerous guy to confront, right? So all this talk about Spence car crash, this guy got shot in the head, all right? So it is what it is. And if there was any lingering effects of the car crash, well, guess what? Crawford wanted to fight him before the car crash, right? So it is what it is. And he looked pretty good in the Ugas fight. So, hey, right? But I don't. Maybe I'm over exaggerating, but I just think he just didn't look good, man, after that fight.
So Bud, one thing he said after the fight is he's an overachiever. He said it. So you just hear him talk, and there's still some sort of humbleness about it, right? I think he probably understands he's a special fighter, but I'm an overachiever. I'm a smaller guy. I'm an overachiever. I'm coming up beating bigger fighters. But retire, no retire, I tend to think he's not going to retire, and that's not going to be on the table. I don't think it's even going to be discussed.
I don't think he's a small guy anymore, though. I will say
I don't think so either. But with Spence, I don't think retirement is going to be seriously discussed amongst his team. I think he enjoys fighting. And I think he's at a point in his career where he's going to make a lot of money no matter who he fights, and he's not going to leave that on the table. All I'm saying is when it comes to this particular fight, because I think you can get creative with Spence, right? Keith Thurman's also older and he's inactive. He's fought once the past 3-something years.
Well, Keith Thurman's in the fight Shield,
he already beat Danny Garcia, and if Danny Garcia can somehow get hold of a real belt at middleweight fighting catch weight, that's also something they can do in the future. So I think there's too many options on the table for him to retire. But what I would caution people on is I see people saying, let's do the rematch at 154 and see why. Other than money, which we don't care about as fans, why we care about their money. Why do we need to see this again? And what makes you think that something can change at 154? I don't think people understand. People are out there highlighting weight drained and car crash, but I don't think people are understanding quite enough the stylistical matchup that we had here, mismatch we had here. And it's
I was going to
say, case 4 or 5 years
this
ago.
This is not a stylistic, it was a mismatch. But that's right. So yes, that's correct.
But stylistically too, it shows up more when your reflexes slow down. That's why we talk about the aging process backfire. But when he's throwing the same array of punches, and it's obvious Bud has already put it in his computer brain, the pattern. He's already uploaded the pattern, and he's like, this is it. And then he's just going to go to town. He already knows he's going to leap in. That first knockdown, D-style, and it's hilarious because I spoke about the 3-punch combination that Inoue landed on Fulton Jr. to put him down, right? And it started with the spearing jab, and I had dudes tell me, anybody can land a spearing jab. And I said, not like that. And this is evidence of it. Errol Spence goes to throw a spearing jab, and his head's down, and his feet are wide apart. And then Bud just throws a left hook with his offhand, a left with his offhand. His offhand is behind him. He throws the left that lands behind the ear and starts off all of this. And then he lands a right short shot that looks like a jab to put him down. And it didn't matter what Spence did because he's too basic. If you watch it again, I watched it 3 times. First 2 times just for fun, the third time to try to break it down. And I'm watching this, and you can just tell Spence is just way too basic of a fighter. Spence is so used to overwhelming guys and pushing guys back. And then when he gets some resistance, he just goes back to it, right? And pay attention to David Benavidez when it comes to this, too. He just plan B, C, D, E, F is just doubling, tripling, quadruple down on A.
Turning it up.
Eventually, you're going to run into a fighter where that's not going to work. And Spence ran into that with
Bud.
There's
I said it before the fight. There's a difference between making adjustments and turning it up in the tempo. Those are 2 different things. And I think a lot of Spence fans thought, oh, he made an adjustment against Cal Brook. Not really. He turned it up against Cal Brook.
He turned
and overwhelmed them.
He has a dog in him. Spence has a dog in him.
But like you said, but like you said, what happens when that doesn't work? What do you do then?
Yeah,
you know, like there's nothing. They had no answers, bro. Nothing. Spence was overwhelmed in this fight, and I'll tell you right now, I saw enough to know who the better fighter is. It's clear, but I just want to clarify on the styles make fights thing. Yes, styles make fights in boxing. They do, right? But people need to be careful. It's not like a rock, paper, scissors. Like, oh, well, scissors beats paper, and then rock beats scissors, and like that's not. Boxing isn't rocks, paper, scissors like that, right? Like, someone can have a style that quote unquote gives a guy problems and still lose because the other guy is just a much better fighter, right? You could have the style to beat that quote unquote is made to beat a guy, but if you're not better than him,
yeah,
you got to be close to him. And what I mean by this is this was not a situation where they're both at the same level, but Crawford's style just happens to be the scissors and Spence is the paper, so it is what it is. No, it's not that simple. Crawford is just a better fighter. And I have an interesting question for you.
Go ahead.
Would you watch it or be interested? And how gangster would this be if Bud said, let's do the rematch, I'll fight you orthodox? And can he beat Spence orthodox? I think he can.
Yeah, easy. I think easily.
I don't think it's like a Vernon Forrest Mayorga situation where that guy just had his number, or Mosley over De La Hoya, or Winky Wright versus Trinidad. I don't think it's that type of situation here. This isn't his style just gives him problems, or you know what I mean? Mosley Margarito, but then Cotto struggled with Margarito. Like no. Like this. He's just a superior fighter in the same way, as crazy as this sounds, as Floyd was over Arturo Gotti. In the same, that is crazy. Imagine Arturo Gotti like, oh, we got to run it back. Let's do it at 147. What? That's what it sounds like to me. I'm just saying.
You're right. It is. Why do we need to see it again? Edwin Castillo, appreciate the super chat guy. PBC didn't want this fight, but Spence did. I agree. I think the past 2 years, Spence got to a point where he got tired of hearing it and was like, all right, we need to do this now. Enough with the other side of the street stuff. And I think he took Al kicking and screaming to this fight. Just my opinion. Jesus M adjustments can be made. I hope you're not talking about Spence. And shout out to Jesus M. But if people really think that Spence can make adjustments in this fight, and from a first fight to a second fight, Look, man, people need to be careful because they're going to get this guy seriously hurt. It's to that point because you can't ask of this guy to go in that ring again with Bud. And I can't imagine it would do good numbers because who the hell would think that's a competitive fight? Who the hell would think that Spence could win a fight with Bud? They could fight 27,000 times, 20,007 times, 7,000 times. Bud would win. I mean, what do people need to see? I mean, you can highlight everything. Like you said, it's not so much styles, but even styles. Even if it's just styles, even if these guys were head to head, the stylistic part of it is a nightmare for Errol Spence because he's got a guy who can switch hit so he can catch different angles. He can fight going back. He can take a half step back and land powerful punches to knock you out. He can walk you down too. He can do whatever he wants with you. And we got to do this again. Why? Because of the business side of boxing. Y'all are going to get this dude severely damaged if you send him back in there. And there is a possible pathway forward for Errol. It's the problem with marinating it is he's 33 now, so that window is a lot closer than a lot more closed than a 28-year-old Fulton Jr. who has a ton of time to right the ship. For Errol, that window is almost all the way closed. He's got to right the ship going forward, and he doesn't have much of a window to do it. But there are pathways forward. There's always Keith Thurman at 154. There's always Danny Garcia at middleweight.
It's kind of like remember when Cotto lost to Pacquiao, and then he moved up, and then look, he became a champion at 154. Then he went up to beat Martinez. Like opportunity, like something like that could happen for Spence, right? I still question his neurological situation here. But it's just something Capital saying, look, I mean, De La Hoya, Pacquiao, Gotti, Mayweather, it's all the same to me anyway. But the reason I believe the Gotti one applies is because of that reason, Capital, because everyone knew how much better Mayweather was than Gotti. And that's how we beat him, like a guy that we all know is much better. Like, it's not the shocking part. It's not what I'm talking. I'm talking about he made him look like the way Mayweather made Gotti look. Like, you know what I mean? If Gotti's here and Mayweather's up here, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's how he made him look. That's the whole point. That's the point. Like, so, but yes, I'm not talking about. There's a lot of beatdowns in boxing. We could go through a lot of them. That's not what I'm talking about. Like I could say, oh, it's like Cotto versus Alfonso Gomez. Like, yeah, he beat him down. He landed 60%. Like that was a beatdown, by the way, right? But I just don't like. It's not the beating. It's not the shock. It's not. That's not what I'm talking. I'm talking about. The way like Mayweather made Arturo Gotti look, and people expected it, and so it makes a great fighter like Floyd makes a Gotti look that way.
Mm-hmm.
Crawford made Spence look like Arturo Gotti versus Mayweather. That is astonishing to me, right? So don't get lost in the sauce, Apple. Don't lose it because you want to argue about which analogy you want to use. You can use whatever you want, but just understand my point, right? I brought up the point. Just try to understand it, Apple, right? But look, there's something I noticed. I didn't say anything, Calix, because people saw it as a great moment, and oh, look, they're great sportsmen. And I have to be honest with you, when I saw the face-off after the weigh-in, I don't know, like when Spence was like, I want to thank you for making this fight happen, but like being very friendly with him and like, I don't know, man. I just maybe I'm reaching, but I felt something there. I felt like I sensed like some, I don't want to say weakness, but I sensed it. And I just felt like Bud was like, oh, I got you. You know, because there's been several. Remember when Bud just reached over and grabbed Spence's like stomach, With it, man, you fat. And then Spence was like, no, I'm not fat. Like he just let Spence like reach up and like grab his long hair, like, oh man, you're fat, man. You gotta lose all that weight. This is all muscle right here. Like, I don't know if you remember that confrontation.
Mm-hmm.
And every time they're face to face, like Spence is like, hey man, thank you for making this fight. I appreciate you. And I don't know. Maybe he was trying to soften Bud up. Like, I think he wanted Bud to maybe take it easy on him. But Bud's not wired that way. It doesn't matter if you're nice to him. It doesn't matter, right? He's gonna fight you. He's gonna beat your ass the same way, right? Whether he hates you, whether he likes you, it doesn't matter, right? But that's how I felt, man. I felt like it was like a moment of like, okay, it's nice and all, but the weigh-in is not a time for peace, bro. It's not.
Mm-hmm.
I'm expecting, like, you don't necessarily have to trash talk, but I'm expecting a stare down. I'm expecting eyes of steel. You know what I mean? I'm just saying.
Yeah. So I want to highlight real quick. One thing I was wrong about was I thought that Spence would be more competitive than he was early. Um, and I think that very much highlights the point you're trying to make with this isn't so much about styles. It's just you had a much better fighter in there in Crawford than Spence because stylistically you could see going into the fight a possibility that Spence does maybe have some success walking Bud down. But what this was just a dude saying, no, I'm the wrong dude for you. And it was evident right away. And I thought Errol would have a good first 3 or 4 rounds, and it just never materialized. It never got to his destination. And then you're just like, this is in a way Fulton Jr. all over again. I thought there was maybe one level separating these guys. There's multiple levels separating these guys. And it gets me back to my point, what I really want to highlight at the beginning of the show and late in the show. Really hammer this home is it's nice to have special athletes doing special athlete shit, right? Every sport has that. You have LeBron James coming back from down 3-1 against Golden State and, running from half court and pasting the dude's shot off the backboard and hitting shots late in the game. You got stuff like that in every sport. We get it so seldom in boxing that you almost forget what it's like. And it's nice for me to have my son next to me. And I know he's going to remember that moment 20, 30 years from now saying, I remember this special fighter named Bud Crawford who did this against Errol Spence Jr. I remember watching it with my dad and his friends. It's nice to have moments like that. It's nice to have, in a way, we talked about that on the phone last week. It's nice to have special generational fighters doing special generational shit to where a generation from now, we'll be able to tell the younger generation, I had this dude in my generation named Bud Crawford, named Naoe Inoue, who was doing some crazy shit and just beating the hell out of great fighters and making them look average. To me, that's the big takeaway. I'm going to troll on Twitter. I'm going to have my fun because, like I said, these dudes need to eat their crow in interest, and we're going to have fun with that going forward. They're never going to forget that shit. But at the same time, just looking back, sitting back, looking at it, to me, that's the big takeaway is a special fighter, 2 special fighters, really. They have so much in common, but in a way, when you look at it, style of fighting, sadistic, powerful fighters who want to knock your head off, punch placement, not only punch placement, when they land these punches, they just having a different effect than other fighters when they land those. But another one is they mostly been hidden from the world. And even hardcore boxing fans are missing it because they're so busy with whatever agendas they're trying to push that they're just missing what's in front of them. Like Inoue and Crawford, those are 2 of the guys that I go and look at the most when I'm watching film now. It's just you watch everything they're doing. With Bud too, he can throw the jab great with both hands, and then he can throw the jab much like Golovkin as a power hand and as a defensive mechanism.
Look,
It's just so much he can do.
There's a lot of fighters that are heavy-handed and punch hard. That's not what stifles these guys. That's not what. It's the ring IQ, bro. It's just they're both great athletes as well. I mean, on top of that, so they have the ring IQ and they have the mechanics to make shit happen on top of it. But what I mean by what I'm saying is this. Remember, I was saying like Fulton felt like he would just move a muscle, and he just get smacked in the face, and he's like, "Damn, no, it's because that's what Inoue does. He stifles guys. At least in the last few fights he has, they just don't know what to do. They're like, anytime I do something, he's either beating me to the punch, or he's making me miss and making me pay every time. So they're second guessing themselves. They're overreacting to what they're doing, right? That's what Spence said. He was overreacting to any little movement. If Bud winked at him, he would have flinched. You know what I mean? Like just anything. It's the ring IQ, bro. It's the way they're setting up the punches, the way they're working the angles, and these guys just don't know how it's being set up. They just don't know. Like Spence just didn't know what was coming next, right? And in the case of both Inoue and Crawford, as of right now, as it stands today, they're playing rocks, paper, scissors with these guys, and they see the hand first. That's the type of advantage they have, and it's hard for these guys, man. You know what I mean? And one more thing, Calix, I need to say it. It needs to be said. I don't, for the record, I don't do lists. I don't have a 1 through 10, a 1 through 5. Or I don't do a pound for pound list. I never have. I'm a traditionalist in the sense, like when they said Ray Robinson's the best pound for pound fighter in boxing, they didn't like bust out with a list, right? They just said he's the best pound for pound. As of right now, I got Crawford number 1 pound for pound.
And you know what? I'm glad you brought that up because I think that's another thing I spoke too soon on last week. Remember when you asked me in True School Sports last Tuesday, or was it Tuesday or Wednesday? I think it was Tuesday.
Tuesday, yeah.
And you're asking us, is there anything that can happen on Saturday night that would change your mind that Inoue is pound? And I was like, I ain't saying that anymore. That's another thing. Like I could say I was wrong on because
hold my beer, literally, because the nickname is Bud. So he's like, hold my Budweiser.
D-Style, you've highlighted this. There have been multiple fights this year where we say that's going to be hard to top. When Teofimo did what he did to Josh Taylor, like, whoa.
Zoo Harrison, to start with that.
Zoo Harrison, whoa. And then Teofimo, whoa. Teofimo, and that's going to be hard to beat. And then there's a fight on Tuesday. And we're saying it. We're like, that dude, that's probably not going to be top this year as performance of the year. We had to wait 4 days.
And I'm not going to say it again, by the way. I'm not saying.
That's how special of a week last week was. It's like these dudes right there. We need to be appreciating what we've got. That's what I would just like. Those dudes out there, they're going to be miserable. They're not going to be able to enjoy it. They're just
how vindicated is Juan Manuel Marquez has been saying for years Crawford's the number 1 pound for pound, right? He's been getting roasted by Mexican media because he didn't have Canelo number 1. Now, there might have been some other stuff going on because Marquez has been very critical of Canelo, but at this moment, whether he was capping or not, like he's vindicated right now, right? Like he's got his feet in the sofa, like, well, what I tell you, right? Numero uno, pound for the pound, Terence Crawford, because he called him Terence Crawford, you know, but that's numero uno, like, you know, so he's just chilling, bro. You know what I mean? Like I'm just saying.
Yeah. Shout out that guy Bass. Got to get him on the channel. And
why you didn't say hi to me? Well, what I do to Bass?
Oh,
what's going on?
But it needs to be highlighted. Those dudes are so blinded
Shout
by
out to Fish.
hatred that they're not going to be able to enjoy anything. But what I would tell you is if you're just happy people just following boxing, and I've tried to explain this to people over the past months and year, especially, is there are certain fighters that they become bigger and they're respected different by hardcore boxing people. And they basically just gotten their base by just fighting a certain way, knocking guys out, fighting for real titles. And they've gotten their base the way they've gotten their base, although Bud Crawford's not as big as some of these other guys as far as money and value and all that stuff, the business side. But guys like Bud, in a way, Canelo, they basically just have boxing fans as their base. These aren't tribalistic bases. These aren't guys that are going to be pushing false narratives out there. In fact, the false narratives are going to be pushed against them. But it's mostly just basically hardcore boxing fans who just sit back and are happy and want to pop open a cold one and watch a boxing match on Friday and Saturday night. We just look at this for escapism, who adopt fighters like Bud Crawford, Naue, Inoue, Canelo Alvarez. Canelo comes in the door and he's got strictly a Mexican fan base. Now he's got a universal fan base for fighting a certain way, in a certain manner, behaving a certain way, and sticking to that consistently. But one thing I was wrong about last week, D-Style, is I didn't think there was going to be a performance on Saturday to make me change my mind on Inoue pound for pound, and I'm still wrestling with it. It's subjective, right? So you can have a 1A, 1B, and I think that's where I'm at right now. Is both of them look so special to me. Inoue was ahead of the pack coming in, but what we have now clearly is these guys are up here, and everybody else right now is a shelf below them. And that's no disrespect to guys like Canelo, Usyk. You know, we love those fighters and we cheer for them and we appreciate their greatness and break it down. But I think these two guys have separated themselves. And when I was watching this fight Saturday night, it's like, it's going to be one of those things, right? Where when Bud fights, I'm saying, I think that's the pound for pound king. And then when Inoue fights, I think that's the pound for pound king. And since Bud did it last, but Bud did it in such a vicious manner to where he is beating down a pound for pound fighter. And as the pound for pound fighter is getting a standing 8 count, he's talking shit to another pound for pound fighter on the first row in Mel Charlo and grabbing his balls and saying, all right, you're next, but I'm done here with you. I'm done right now. I'm going to go beat your friend up a little more. That's what we got. And I see something like that. And I'm like, how is that guy not the pound for pound king? So I got to give a slight edge maybe to Bud, but it's really a 1A, 1B scenario for me.
Look, it's probably going to be a situation, right? Like every time each one of them fights, everyone's going to be like, always number one, you know, and then the other guy fights always number one. But I'm going to give it to Crawford personally.
Yep.
I just think Crawford has been, this was just a big win. And I do think Spence is better than Fulton. Look, I just feel that way, right?
And Bud's out there saying, you know, this is the Bud Crawford era. And when you see a guy that's been on the pound for pound list, Ring Magazine, for almost a decade, it's really hard after seeing a performance like that to argue against it, right? I mean, it's people don't really define what the era is, and then you can have multiple guys in the era. I don't believe that this is one guy's singularly era, right? Because Roy had his 90s, and then Oscar was there with him, and you had the heavyweights. It can be
there's never one guy
in their era. It's not one guy, but I think the guy that stands above him, maybe a little slightly ahead of Inoue right now, would be Bud Crawford. Iceman, appreciate the super chat. We appreciate y'all's channel giving us place to talk boxing instead on the streets. I appreciate you as well. You want to sum it up? Pretty much what you got?
Man, I have so much to say. I'm gonna do the videos about. I can't stop talking about this fight and what happened. But look, I think what's important here is that it was a great performance by Crawford, one we'll be talking about for a long, long time. And I mean, I know he's going to be 36, but he just doesn't look young, old. Right? He doesn't fight old. He doesn't, like, he's in his prime right now. and it's going to be interesting to see what he does. I think Crawford is an extraordinary talent, and they delayed this from him. He should have done this 5 years ago and continue and progress his career from there. Crawford would have taken care of business a lot faster than Spence did, getting all the belts. He would have, but they delayed it. They delayed this from us. 5 years of our life waiting for this to happen when it should have happened already, right? And that's the price of marination. You guys do understand that we only have one life. We only have so many years on this earth. Do we really want to be waiting 5-6 years for all these big fights? Well, where you could instead get a bunch of them a lot faster. I mean, I would rather get the fights faster. That's me. You know what I mean? And I can't help to think of a friend of mine that passed away last year that wanted to watch this fight for years, and he never got to see it. Right? That's why I don't like marinating fights. That's why I don't like waiting. Let's make these fights when they matter. I give Fulton a lot of credit because he didn't make us wait 5 years, for a freaking fight with Inoue. We got right to it. We got right to business, right? And just appreciate the moment, guys. Appreciate what we're saying. Appreciate these guys while they're here. That's one thing we don't do as fight fans sometimes. We don't appreciate the guys when they're doing great things. And Crawford and Inoue are doing that, in particular. And they fought in the same week, so that's why we're bringing them up. You know what I mean? So, and also one more thing, and I am a proud boxing fan. Yes, a fan. I don't know why being a fan has been shunned. I don't know why people are being like they stigmatized it. Like, oh, you're just a fan. Yes, I'm a fan. And I love coming on here and talking to other fans, right? And I love the fact that people pay to go see fights and they cheer or they boo or whatever, or they stay silent like the Japanese, whatever they choose to do, and they do what they want to do at these fights, okay? It's as simple as that. I'm a proud fan. I started as a fan. I fell in love with the sport as a fan. I will die a fan of the sport of boxing. It doesn't matter if I go to fights. It doesn't matter if I get inside information. It doesn't matter if I interview fighters, right? But I'll just end it with one more thing. Ali's setback was called out by Terence Crawford.
Really?
Yeah, Terence Crawford said, look at you, Ali. You're looking stupid and sad over there. You're going against me. And Ali's setback said, oh, we're all biased. So I'm going to be biased if I want. Just shamelessly biased, right? Yes, we all have biases. But you can be objective. Okay? You could be objective and look at an Anoya Inoue in the year 2023 and say, hey, that guy's come on, you can't say that's a great fighter right there. You can't say Crawford's a great fighter. Do you have, it doesn't mean you lick balls, Ali, to get exclusive interviews from Deontay Wilder. That's not what that means. All right? And look at us. We ain't getting an interview from Crawford or Inoue anytime soon. All right? That's obviously not what we're doing. Well, we're not going to get an Inoue on here to give us any time of his day, right? So we're not doing it for interview. We're just giving them, all we're doing is giving them the props. That's all we're doing. So, Ali, yes, we're all biased to a certain degree. I don't believe in fake neutrality, right? But fake neutrality is not objectivity. It's not. You can be objective, or at least try to be, right? That's all I'm saying. And Calix, I apologize. Me and True School Sports gassed you up and convinced you that Nonito Donero's going to pull it off at the age of 40. It is what it is. I hope you didn't bet on the fight.
No, I did. But the good thing is I bet on it when a couple of days before it was originally supposed to happen. So I got Santiago at plus 145. So I ended up winning. But
by the way, I bet Cruz to win straight up and Crawford to win straight up. I got almost 3-1 odds on it, so I'm happy about that. So
and I got Bud also. I won Bud on the top line -115 and Bud +330 knockout. So it was good night. Good night. You don't always get those, and I'm not out here patting myself on the back because nobody's out here batting 1,000. But one thing I wanted to highlight, this will be me summing it up, is price of marination. I want to piggyback off that because it'll be framed that, and I talked about how a lot of, in a way, Bud, Canelo's fan base are just boxing fans, right? And we've adopted these fighters. And it's going to be framed that Bud's fans are coming after the Errol Spence fans now and demanding apologies and all this stuff, which that's not happening. It's happening, but it's deeper than that. What's happening now is people are sort of rebelling against fights being marinated 5+ years. We've seen Sampson say it about Benavidez versus Plant. Then we look at the numbers in the fight and we're like, that's what you marinated for 5 years. And it needs to be said because it needs to stop happening. What could have happened here was Bud beats Errol 4 years ago, which would have always happened, right? Bud was always going to beat Errol, and Al knew that. And if that would have happened 4 years ago, this beatdown, then Errol can always right the ship. Maybe he gets a rematch and he's younger, and then maybe he does a couple things later on and he gets a trilogy, and we're seeing the trilogy in a different weight class already. But another thing is, we're not going to forgive and forget. We're not going to forget and forgive that you've locked up a whole division, a sexy traditional division, where you have 7 undefeated fighters in the top 10, all because you don't want to give us number 1 versus 2, all because you don't think the house fighter is going to win. And on top of that, you're not giving this dude access to any of your fighters. So you have to keep this artificial bubble in the weight class to where it looks like your fighters look great because they're just simply fighting each other. And that's not going to be forgiven. It's not going to be forgotten. And the reason it's a big problem is now Boots Ennis is sitting there still waiting for a vacant shot. Fighting finally on a main event 7 years into his career. Virgil Ortiz can't even make 147 anymore and couldn't do anything of note there because he was busy waiting around trying to make the weight. Now he's got to move to 154. We could have had an undisputed champion 3-4 years ago in Bud Crawford. Then we could have all moved to 154, 160. Errol could be competing at welterweight right now, and we could have these younger guys at welterweight with real belts, and we could have had another undisputed champion by now. And this is the price of marination. It's much deeper than just saying, oh, you held the fight from Bud and we're Bud fans, so we're going to come for revenge now. No, this is boxing fans telling you, just good old-fashioned boxing fans telling you, stop the bullshit. Stop the bullshit. Start giving us fights when they matter. You can't point to anything, any evidence that marinating fights have made these fights bigger. And on top of that, now you have no safety net under Errol Spence Jr., who just lost a fight at 33 years old, a fight that likely took a decade off his career, and now his pathway forward for retribution is very slim, and that's sad to see. I feel sort of empathy for Errol Spence Jr. for that. But on that note, I appreciate these great performances and these great fighters. I appreciate everybody from coming through. And where are we at tomorrow night?
Well, first, guys, hit the like button. Look, I have a feeling some of you Spence fans are watching. The road to redemption starts now. Hit the like button. You know what I mean? It'll be good for your soul. I'm just saying, it'll be like a good, like, you know what? Let me start eating my crow by hitting the like. No, you don't have to tell anybody. You don't have to admit it to anybody. Just hit the like, and then you're good. You don't have to let anybody know. Okay, you could be closet fans of ATP and ATPX. You know, we know you love Aftermath. It is what it is. Subscribe to Calix, by the way. Channel's on fire. Support the channel. Support my channel. D-Style Boxing is the name. ATP podcast tomorrow. Look, we're gonna. Look, we cover everything on ATP, so we're going to cover some of the fights, okay, that are going to up. I'm not happy about them, but we got to trash them. We're going to trash them. Like Jake Paul's going to fight Nate Diaz. It is what it is, but also most importantly, we're going to I need to address my evolution of how I seen Nayo Inoue over the last 4 or 5 years and all that. Because there's some people that say I have some explaining to do, right? So I need to I have some explaining to do, right? But just stay tuned tomorrow, and I might do a live tonight. So there you go.
And on top of that, I will be back during this week as well. A couple more shows on this because I'm not done with this. And on top of that, we got to talk about Pitbull. We got to talk about Donaire, stuff like that. And on top of that, I want to give a special shout out to Chauncey Pearls, who was a man of his word and once again paid on his bet. Already hit me up on Venmo. And on top of that, that intro track that I should have up on the channel by the end of the week, he hit me with the intro track. So be on the lookout for that as well. On that note, appreciate everybody for tuning in. But in a way, pound for pound, we out. God bless. Peace.